So, good evening, everyone. Thank you guys for tuning in to Teaching for the Culture, the Whole Child series. It is very wonderful that you guys are here. We're typically on Tuesdays, but we were having some technical issues. StreamYard didn't want to work right. Then I had issues with my computer. It was a lot. So, we moved today's episode, or yesterday's episode, to today. And so I'm thankful for everyone being here. How are you, Kimberly? How are you today? And what's going on with you?
Well, the internet's for being haters yesterday. So I'm glad that we're able to get on today. I am all right. I am in the process of transitioning and moving. So I've got a lot of moving parts that are going on, but I definitely did want to take time for this because I feel like this is time well spent and very valuable to our community. So I'm glad, that I paused for a moment to take this time because I definitely think we need to talk. But yeah, I am okay. I can't say great because I there's a lot of stuff that's going on in the background, and um, yeah, it's a lot. It's just a lot.
Well, I thank you all the time for, bringing your expertise and bringing your transparency and your authenticness to this programming. And I think that, we really have this programming for a reason, and it's to really
Mhm.
normalize conversations that typically don't happen, that should happen, which is linked to trauma. And again, folks, like, this whole series is about breaking cycles of trauma and building positive coping mechanisms to impact not only your children, but I mean, adults could use these same principles as well, to be better, not only for yourself but for your children that you are, modeling the behavior for.
Absolutely. And I think that's the good thing with everything that we do talk about. Once we as adults can do the work ourselves, then we can help our kids, right? So it's really all about breaking those cycles
Hmm.
and breaking the generational curses and things that have been sitting on our families and our communities for so long. And I know both of us have that in mind with everything that we do because we really just want people to win, right? This is
Yep.
all about empowering our community so that we all can win. But there are some things that we have to do first to be able to actually make that happen. So, um, as you all are coming on, as we always ask for you to let us know that you're here. Say hey in the comments, let us know where you're watching from, share the broadcast, invite some friends so that we can normalize having these conversations. And the way that we do that is by sharing that information. So I have a watch party going on over here. So hopefully the internet will connect because I just really feel like we just need to talk. Like we were talking beforehand, I'm like we need to talk because
Yeah.
some things are really occurring that we need to talk about. So go back and watch our previous episodes if you haven't seen them. Last show, 2 weeks ago's episode was about the power of a teacher. So that one was pretty powerful. But we've had content all this time again with the purpose of being able to empower our community. So we want to make sure that you're getting the information and that you're prioritizing that information. So yeah, today you posted something the other day, and I can't recall with all the things. Like, first of all, let me just say, Teaching for the Culture is blowing up, and I'm just so excited to be a part of it because there are so many branches to this tree,
Hmm.
and I see what God is doing. Like, I just know that some really big things are happening, and it makes me excited inside because I know that the more that we do this, the more people are going to get free, right? So I can't recall what platform or show or what have you it was on, but you have posted something about Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Hmm.
So I wanted you to kind of talk about that and bring that into this conversation today because I know in education we know about it and in psychology we know about it, but before being an educator, I had no idea what it was. So I want to like make it plain for everybody who's watching who doesn't have that education background or that psychology background.
Absolutely. So my undergraduate degree was criminal justice with a minor in psychology. So I really took a lot of psychology classes to really, study behavior and patterns. And it is storming over there, baby. I hear
Can you hear it? I was like trying to, ooh, can they hear that thunder? Yes,
it.
it's
But
storming.
so yeah, let's go ahead and share the chart. I created the chart last year, and this was right when I stepped out to advocate on the outside of the four walls of the classroom to really hone in on the root issue. And the
Mm-hmm.
root issue is, a systemic failure of our public education system over cycles.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I created a school edition because we often talk about, what our child's needs are, but we don't really see it in this perspective. And I put a school edition because we're talking about school, we're talking about our children. And so with this chart, you can see that there's different levels, and each level is a new awareness, a new awakening that builds up to where you're to the point where you're self actualized. And so my intention with posting this the other day when we were talking about reopening schools. Well,
Mm-hmm.
reopening schools is not safe for the children. It's a
Mm-hmm.
safety issue, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore how can we say that our children are going to be the best students, the focused, and performing their best when we are missing the foundation of safety? They don't
Mm-hmm.
feel safe in school because of the coronavirus, because of what's going on, and it's a safety issue. And so I think that the chart and the study of Maslow is really, really important. We learn that in, education, but I think that more people need to be aware that this is a real thing. Like, you have to have your foundation before
Right.
you build anything up. And that's the root of it. No matter
Mm-hmm.
what words you put on it, you must have a strong foundation before you build upon it. And that's
Right.
exactly what the Maslow theory is about. And the whole thing about it is you can't bloom before Maslow. And Bloom
Mm-hmm.
again is another theory on how to reach children in the education system. But we
Mm-hmm.
can't do that unless we have the foundation. And so that was the intent of me, posting that again.
Yeah, and I know we say that all the time in education, at least those of us who actually are aware of teaching the whole child. We talk about that. Bloom's has to do with higher level thinking, higher order thinking, and getting our students to a place of being able to accept new knowledge and own that new knowledge. But to your point, if I'm hungry, I can't acquire new knowledge. If I, have don't have clean clothes, if my basic needs as far as shelter are not met, I cannot come to school and then accept this new knowledge because I'm concerned with the foundational things that are not in place, right? So I know a lot of times we neglect in education to really acknowledge and honor those first things, which and then we scratch our heads like, why aren't the kids learning? Like, what's happening? Why aren't they getting it? Well, they aren't getting it because there are some needs that aren't being met. So, interestingly enough, when you put it up, I wasn't even thinking in context of coronavirus. And I definitely, coronavirus is definitely a thing. Um, and that makes all the sense in the world when you talk about safety. But I was thinking about a different kind of safety because I feel like we don't always think about the other ways for someone to feel safe, right? So when we say this word safety, I think we automatically go to like physical safety, right? So we'll think about having school resource officers, and we think about school shootings, and we think about that type of stuff. Like, is it safe? As far as, am I physically safe? Am I going to get harmed? But then, to your point, we think about physical safety as far as health,
Hmm.
right? So, is it healthy for me to be in these schools? And I know you talk about all the time stuff like our schools have mold, our schools, just the desks that our students are sitting in are broken and not matching, and things are falling apart, doors falling off, ceiling tiles coming off, like all of these things. So how can one feel safe within this environment if it feels like this environment is falling apart, or this environment is making me sick?
Mm-hmm.
um, and many of these things are not necessarily apparent to our families when they come into the schools, right? So if you think about when they come into the front office, well, that's the best looking place that there is on the campus. But then if you start to venture out into some of the classrooms, you may start to see other things. But even with something like mold, you can't see it. Or schools that have bats. Like I lived in an apartment in Riverview right just before I started teaching, and I had bats in my and at the apartment. There were bats in the roof space. And I remember it took me a year and a half to finally get somebody to come and get these bats. And at the time, I was a drugstore manager, so I used to work an overnight shift. So I would leave my house when the bats were waking up and going out to live their lives. And then I would come home when the bats were going back in. So I always saw these bats, right? And I remember thinking the first time when I saw them, I didn't know what it was. Like I thought it was birds. And then I'm thinking to myself, it's the middle of the night though. I don't think birds really fly at night. Like I just feel like I've
Mm-hmm.
never really seen birds fly, right? So then the smell cued me into the fact that it was bad. So then I just wanted to throw up. Like I don't know if you all have ever smelled what bat guana, so guana is bat poop, what that smells like, but it has a very distinctive smell.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember smelling that and being so grossed out, like just wanted to vomit. So then I would have to go to my car. I lived on the second floor. So I remember having my umbrella because I know they operate by sonar, but I don't want to see you. Like I don't, yeah. So I would have my umbrella and I could hear the sonar as they were flying. I could hear like it makes like an echoing sound. And it was just not fun. Let me just say that. I had to raise hell to get them to come and get these bats.
Wow.
So when I hear that there are bats at schools, and I've been at schools because when I mentored, I had the opportunity to go to, I don't know, upwards of 20, 30 schools each year. I would walk into the schools and I can smell it. I can smell the fact that they have bats because I know what it smells like because I had to endure that at that apartment that I was living at. And I hear teachers talk about like how it took 2 years to get them to come and get the bag. And it does. Like it literally took me a year and a half for somebody to do something about these bats. Because
Wow.
they'll say things like, well, first of all, they don't believe you, right? Because they're asleep during the day.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't see them. But then after that, they got to go through a process, so they got to build them a bat house and they got to like do all these things. They can't just get rid of them, they say, right? But it's not a safe condition again when you're talking about that bats and bat guana plus mold plus all this other stuff. This is the stuff that families don't see, right? But even having said all of that, that's still not what I thought about when you put up this image and you were talking about safety. I thought about emotional safety.
Mm.
And the reason is because there was a recent arrest here of a coach who was arrested with 6 counts of inappropriate sexual behavior with one of his athletes. He's a high school coach. And the thing that kind of pushed me over the edge was people, as people were posting about it, people that have lived here in Tampa were saying things like, oh, he's been doing that for years. Oh yeah, yeah, child, he been doing that. He finally got caught. I'm glad he finally got caught because he's been doing this. So then I'm thinking in my mind, we have had our children in a condition with a predator posing as a teacher for years and nobody could do anything? Why? Like, what was happening that prevented him from getting caught sooner? Why have our kids been emotionally and physically unsafe at the different schools? And he was at the Boys and Girls Club and in the neighborhood and all of these different contacts with kids. And our kids have been subjected to this predatory behavior and unsafe right in front of our noses.
Hmm.
And it breaks my heart when I think about it, because I'm always like, I used to tell my students all the time that I'm the biggest snitch that you'll ever meet. So, um, note to self, like, if you don't want to get caught with doing something you don't want to do it, I'm not going to jail for anybody. I just need y'all
Period.
to understand that it's not my calling in life. I am not about to go to jail for nobody. So don't do the illegal things around Kimberly Jackson, because Kimberly Jackson will snitch, in case you needed to hear that disclaimer. So I'm thinking to myself, I definitely would have said something had I known. But then I kept asking myself, why? Why was it not reported? Why? Just why? Why
Right.
did the kids say something? Because they were saying on Facebook, and I see Yolanda made a comment over here in my watch party. She said she asked her daughter about it because she was there for a couple of months and adults were aware. How? How were adults aware and nothing happened? Right? Like, it's very tough for me to conceptualize it because I just know how I am and how sensitive I am to those types of things. Um, and the way that I pay attention to everything and how I know that I would have said something. And I've been in that situation before, both where students have told me that things are happening and I've had to call, but then also where teachers were doing inappropriate things and I had to report it. I've been on both sides of that. And I was really just in my mind trying to figure out the why. And a part of what I came down to is this code, right? So I just told you I'm a snitch.
Hmm.
I operate by snitch code in all aspects of my life, even in my family. I'm a snitch. Like, I be out here telling all the family secrets because I feel like that the family secrets are the places where predatory behavior and abusive behavior lies. So
Yes.
I have made a personal commitment to speak the truth, even if it makes you uncomfortable. Because my philosophy is, if it makes you uncomfortable, then you probably shouldn't have did it. If you didn't do it, I wouldn't have it to tell. You know what I mean? So
Oh, I know.
I don't feel no type of way about you feeling some type of way about me telling people what you did, because if you didn't do it, I wouldn't have anything to say. So, and it reminds me of that accountability thing that we talk about all the time, right? Of how our job is to hold people accountable to the things that they're supposed to do. But when accountability shows up at your doorstep and your character ain't right, well, then it feels like an attack.
Hmm.
So I wanted to talk about these secrets today and why we especially, and I'm not just gonna say I'm gonna take especially back. I'm gonna retract that statement. And I'm just gonna say my special interest is in our black communities. I've only lived in this black skin my whole life, so I can't speak for anybody else's way of how they handle things. But I want to talk about the no snitch policy that we have in our families and in our communities that keep us in these situations. So I want to kind of unpack that, and I don't really have a plan for doing that, but But I want to kind of unpack that because I don't know that people are making the connection to how this continues to have our kids in cycles of trauma. I think that people have the luxury of divorcing themselves from that, and a lot of it is because they've been through this trauma. Um, that we're not connecting the dots of how this can show up at a school and what this has to do with this situation with this coach. So I guess my question, first of all, let me, because I've been talking a lot, let me pause for a second and ask you, what are your thoughts right now? Because I get on my soapbox. So let me get off the soapbox for a second. Okay.
So I think that you bring up a good point, and the point about Maslow and how, when we talk about emotional safety. And I think that that is really key, especially to our young children, because they're dealing with a lot and they don't know how to process that. And if they're in households where they do not learn the skills of how to
Mm-hmm.
handle and how to
Mm-hmm.
cope and how to process things, it is horrible for our children, especially when they are coming to school and then it's more trauma on top of that, on top of what they were dealing with at home. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that normalizing these conversations is important. And I think that a lot of times, like even back to history, when our ancestors, they were working and they were, slaves at that time, there was a no snitch policy at that time.
Mm-hmm.
There was a policy where, if you do something, you don't tell, because, master gonna be over there and whoop you and whoop all of us and
Mm-hmm.
hurt us and demoralize us and all of those things. And there was a link. There was a byproduct of retaliation, fear, these feelings. And I think that that has happened over a course of time. And
Mm-hmm.
now we even have music that is normalizing about not snitching, and you have kids that say, I don't want to be a snitch, and all of those type of things. Like that word snitch has just been so programmed in the
Mm-hmm.
Black community, our
Mm-hmm.
community, so much so that it desensitizes what accountability looks like, in my
Yeah.
personal opinion. Because if you're going to snitch on someone and then you try to hold them accountable, is that there's like a crosshair here where we have this whole no snitch policy, this code that's toxic and trauma filled all the way around it. But then when we try to hold people accountable, it's a complex.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we want? Do we want to continue to be silent and allow things to just move on by, or are we going to speak real truth to power and hold people accountable and deal with that and then move on?
Mm-hmm. So you just said something that I want to bring some illumination to when you talked about speaking truth to power, because I feel like that is a term that has been used in such a cavalier way, just tossed around like it's a penny, when it's actually like a $1,000 bill,
Mm-hmm.
right? I have not personally touched a $1,000 bill, right? So speaking truth to power is not something that everybody is doing. It's not like a penny. It's not something that everybody has access to, right? It is something that takes a special set of courage for you to do, because you understand that the moment that you do it, those crosshairs are going to show up, that there's going to be so much blowback, not because you're lying, but because you're starting to undig the underbelly of the ugly stuff that happens behind the scenes that we're so committed to keeping hidden. So when we talk about speaking truth to power, it's about saying the truth. And first of all, it has to be the truth. Okay.
Preach.
You sitting up there lying to try to spin a story or to spin a narrative is not speaking truth to power, because you're lying. Okay. So first of all, It's got to be truth. But secondly, the speaking truth to power part is speaking the truth even when your voice shakes, even when you know that you're going to get threats, even when you know that you're going to be ostracized from the family, even when you know that your job might be on the line, even when you know that your relationship with your children might be destroyed, right? So speaking truth to power is saying those things because it's the right thing to do,
Mm-hmm.
because it is the truth, right? So when you talk about that, it just makes me think about how many people are shamed into not speaking the truth because of these toxic family scenarios that we have. So, I have so many examples in my family that I can pull from because I've got one of those families where I told you I'm the snitch of the family and I'm a okay with it. You know, I wear the badge proudly, and I have no problem with that. But I can remember, for instance, I have a blog, and in my blog I wrote about how I was physically, verbally, and emotionally abused my entire childhood, and at the hands of my mother. So she would, like, I remember this one time, I'll just say this one time because it's in my blog. So I was in fifth grade, and I had this tendency every year to not do my homework in the first quarter of fifth grade. I was a very good student, right? Straight A's, all of that. But I don't know if I had a high curve for transition or what. But every year, like clockwork, for the first quarter, I would not do my homework. Well, I was in private school, and they would give us homework slips. So a homework slip meant you didn't do your homework. You had to take it home and get it signed. After the third homework slip, so on the fourth one, you would get a detention. So every year I push it to the limit. First quarter, I get 3 homework slips. So I did that, fifth grade. And that my mom, I guess, was sick of me with these doggone homework slips because every year I do this. I don't know why I hadn't learned. And she beat me with an extension cord, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like laid me on the bed and just beat the crap out of me with the extension cord. And I was like yelling for my life. And I remember thinking how nobody came to my aid, like nobody. I don't know where my stepdad was at the time, but she like told me up. And within a few days after that, CPS showed up at the school, and they showed up to do a presentation. But the whole time I'm sitting in my chair, I'm thinking to myself, because they're like, if anybody is hurting you, like you need to let us know. If anybody is doing anything, you know, to you that's inappropriate, you need to let us know. If anybody has touched you, you need to let us know. And I'm sitting there with like fresh whelps all over my body,
Mm-hmm.
but terrified to say anything because of what would happen if I said something. Then she might kill me for real. Then, I don't know, because she would say stuff like, well, if you think you gonna do something, then you call the people and you could just live outside, and like just stuff like that. And so I'm like, maybe she might kick me out, or maybe. So the fear of what would happen by me saying that secret kept me from talking about what happened. Come to find out, our whole family knew that she was abusing me, and then later on my brother. But never, like, y'all never wanted to intervene. Like, y'all never wanted to say, hey, that's not okay that you're abusing your kids. No. Instead, they decided to live under the shroud of secrecy and say, well, that's my sister, so F us, right? We don't matter. And there was a time later on when I was 25, I found out. So my father committed suicide before I was born, and I didn't find this out until I was 25. My mama told me he died from pneumonia, which was just a something that you would tell somebody who's younger. But at this point, I'm 25, so why don't I know what happened to my father, right? So my cousin actually told me, and then there was a situation that happened at the house. I get to the house, I went to try to intervene on another abusive situation that was happening with my brother, and I confronted my mother about that, and some of our family members were there. And I said to our family, my grandmother was there, my uncle, my aunt was there. I was like, why did y'all never help us? Like she is beating the brakes off of us every chance that she gets. Every chance that she gets. And we're calling this discipline when we're not doing anything to be disciplined. We were terrified of this lady. So why did y'all not do anything? They said nothing.
Mm.
So then at this point, I'm grown, right? So I'm like, man, all of y'all could kick rocks. Like, I'm out this piece. I'm done, whatever. I said my piece. I probably cussed a few times and I was like, I'm out of here. My aunt comes running after me and she's like, Kim, I just want you to know, baby, that I love you so much. Girl, bye. Because you know how you could have showed me that you loved me? By speaking up for me, by telling your sister that that wasn't okay. But instead, you chose to be silent, and your silence is complicit. It's complicity. You're being complicit in that situation, which means that you are just as guilty. Get out my face. I'm not doing this, right? And this is what happens with our kids and our families. And it might be physical abuse, it might be sexual abuse, it could be so many different things. But we decide that these family secrets are more important than our children's emotional safety.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. So then when they get to school, they've been taught that what goes on in here stays in here. What happens in the house stays in the house. No matter how toxic it is, no matter how horrible it makes you feel, it doesn't matter because what happens here stays here. So we as educators, the ones of us who have eyes to see, we say something's not right. So we ask, Kimberlyn, is everything okay? But Kimberlyn has been trained to what happens in the house stays in the house. I'm fine. I'm good. Well, I noticed that you had a bruise. Or I fell down the stairs. I jumped out off the side of the swimming pool. The dog bit me. They come up with all of these stories about what happened because we've taught them that they have to hold this secrecy and they can't speak truth to power.
Yeah.
And it's so supremely toxic, and it's heartbreaking. I was going to say it's infuriating. It is infuriating. But underneath that anger is the disappointment and the just despair of the fact that this is how we're raising our kids. This is what we're teaching them. So then on top of that, add another layer to that. Then we blame the kids for the things that happen to them. So back to this situation with this coach, there are people on the internet who are saying, well, them high school girls, they fast. So,
Yeah.
I mean, they be out here, they dating older men and, they just fast and they trying to come up and they trying to do this and they trying to do that. We holding children accountable for adult decisions? But that is a common thing, especially when you're talking about sexual abuse. That's a common thing. So I'm going to protect the abuser because it's a family secret. Everybody, and just the thing. I'm sorry, Bianca. I really didn't know I was gonna get on this soapbox today, but I'm here
No, no, I'm appreciating your transparency, and I think
because
you're setting people free.
so almost all of us have family members that somebody will say something like, "Don't go over there by yourself. Come on out that room. Put some clothes on." When a certain family member comes to the house, if you haven't seen it, you know somebody who has.
Mm-hmm.
So we put the onus on the child to be the one to make sure they're dressed, make sure they're not in the same room with Uncle Reggie, make sure that they are being responsible for the stuff that he does, instead of not letting this fool up in the house and holding him accountable for the stuff that he's doing. I can remember so many times my mother would say, don't come out the room without clothes on. Right? We're kids. 7, 8, whatever. We got clothes on. We got on our pajamas or we got on our little night shirt. You know, we don't have central air, so it's probably hot in the room. So we might have on our panties and our little night shirt. We're kids. Make sure you put clothes on before you come out that room. That way of thinking is so backwards, and it goes through so many levels of our lives. Even I'll take it to church. When you go to church, and then they want to come cover somebody with a blanket because the skirt might be short, too short in their opinion, or the shirt might be too low cut. So we're gonna cover her instead of holding him accountable for worrying about what she looked like. Because if your eyes was trained on the Lord, you wouldn't even be looking at her. How about that? How about you deal with the lust demon that you have inside of you that has you over here trying to make her be responsible for your actions? That's what we do to our kids all the time, especially our girls. There's this hashtag, and it's fast as girls. Hashtag fast as girls. And it's about how we over sexualize our girls, how we put these ridiculous labels on them to make them responsible for the actions and behaviors of grown men. If you think about Centoya Brown, for anybody who doesn't know, was is a now 30-something-year-old woman. But when she was a teenager, she was caught up in sex trafficking. And she was in a situation in Nashville where somebody had purchased her services, and she wound up killing the guy who had purchased her services. Centoya Brown spent 15, 16 years in prison for murder because a grown 41-year-old man tried to buy her for sex. They called her a child prostitute. Do you know that that's not a thing?
Right.
No child can consent to sex with an adult. None of them. I don't care if they walking around butt naked trying to seduce you on a stripper pole. The onus falls on the adults. Period. But because we over sexualize our girls, we make it their fault
Mm-hmm.
because they fast. And because we subscribe to this no snitch policy of secrecy in our communities, we don't deal with the predatory teacher. So now we just have this whole situation where somebody can abuse kids for decades, decades, and get away with it
Yep.
because of this toxic cocktail that we've created of let me be quiet to protect the abuser, and then let me make it the victim's fault. Right
Some
in our schools, right in our families.
some of the girls that were even posting about that particular situation with the coach, there were, women in there that was like, well, when I was 15, I was with, and I'm like, hold on. Okay. First of all, when you were 15, that's not okay. It's not okay. And we don't need to normalize it. And we don't need to, again, like you said, put the onus on the child. It is the adult. At the end of the day, it's the adult. And that also just opens another can of worms because now I want to know why the district didn't do anything about it. All these people have came forward and said that this man has been doing all of these things. Why haven't the district followed policy? That is negligence. You have allowed a predator to interfere with so many generations of children. And I don't understand it. But then that also just leads to how many more are out there that are being protected by the secrecy that we have in our community, and how many people are just staying in this place because of toxic trauma bonds.
Yep. And that whole when I was, that's a toxic. trauma bond, right? Because for somebody to say, and I know when I was a teenager, I used to have grown men approach me all the time. I remember going to buy an Easter outfit. Easter was really big in New Orleans. I remember going to buy an Easter outfit, and this grown man pulled up while me and my friend were walking to the mall, and he was like, I just want to buy y'all an outfit. And he did. He bought the outfit, and we was like, thank you, gave him a wrong phone number and left. But that could have went very differently because it happened all the freaking time. So what? But it was not until I became an adult and understood statutory rape and understood the responsibility of an adult that I realized that that junk was illegal. At the time it was like, oh cool, he want to buy us an outfit, girl, we could save our little money from working at the Gap, child, we ain't got, yes, you could buy me an outfit. Why? Because I'm a child. So I'm thinking like a child because I am a child. I'm not thinking as a child, what does this grown man want to have to do with trying to talk to me and engage with me and have me call him by his first name? Why would that grown man do? What is wrong with this grown man that he can't find nobody his age? I'm not thinking any of that as a child. As a child, I'm flattered. Like, oh my gosh, he thinks I'm mature and whatever. And you know why I feel that way? Because I haven't been affirmed in my house, because I haven't been built up to know my worth, because I haven't been taught my boundaries. So I'm broken. I don't know the difference. And let me go back to boundaries for a second because we've done a show about this before, right? And we talked about boundaries, but I feel like we don't understand how all of this stuff layers upon each other and creates these situations. We will teach our kids at an extremely early age that they don't have boundaries and zero agency over their body, that people can do whatever they want to them when they feel like it. How, you ask? Okay. So we go over to Uncle Reggie's house, right? Um, Auntie Tamika's house. And for some reason, as a child, we're like, I don't really rock with them like that. Like, I don't really like Uncle Reggie and Auntie Tamika. But I'm here because my mama brought me, so here I am, right? Then what your mama say? Go give Uncle Reggie and Auntie Tamika a hug and a kiss. I don't I don't really want to do that. I don't like them like that. But if I don't do it, what's gonna happen? I'm gonna catch a whipping. I'm gonna get in trouble. I'm gonna have some type of negative consequence because I'm honoring my gut feeling inside of me and I'm honoring my boundaries. So then this happens over and over and over again. So when I get to be a teenager, I now don't trust my gut because I've been trained to believe that it doesn't matter. I've been trained to believe that somebody's able to take affection from me and use my body because my parents didn't teach me that I have the right to say no. This doesn't feel good to me.
Preach.
I don't know why it doesn't feel good, but it doesn't. I've been trained to not do that. So now I don't have boundaries. I don't I can't determine and discern when something is safe or when it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
So we set our kids up to walk into these toxic situations where they don't have boundaries, they don't recognize what's going on. We make them responsible for adults, and then we cover the abusers. Like, do y'all see how all of this works together in order to create this toxicity? And this just continues generation after generation after generation after generation. And oh my God.
You right. You right. You on point. That's it. It's that cycle. It's the cycle. So I mean, we normalize these patterns and we make it okay, but it's not okay. And that's why these conversations are so important because our children, they're now being shown things that we weren't seeing as children. I mean, you have, children in elementary school that watch Pornhub, and they are normalizing watching pornographic images as if it's just cartoons, like it's something that they should just be watching. But this is something that's been normalized. There's been issues that we've talked about, of having safeguards in place, but if parents are not being intentional with checking the cell phones and seeing what children are doing, and we're not having conversations at home
That's the
about
part, right?
the this is what I tell parents. I tell parents, I rather you have a conversation with your children than Siri or Apple. I'm sorry, Siri or Google, because either one of those two, they're gonna tell your children, and they might not tell your children what you want them to know from that reference. But they're gonna find out either way. With these cell phones, the kids are finding out, and the kids are being connected, and the kids have easy access to predators. When we were in school, the whole connectivity to predators is not like what it is today. It is so heightened.
Mm-hmm.
It
It's
is
easy.
so dangerous. It is so easy. And you have adults that now pretend that they're children to talk to other children online, and they shield their identity, and it's awful. It's awful. What do you
So,
suggest about breaking the cycle?
one of the things that you just said about it, I'm trying to get myself together because, again,
Yeah.
I did before we did this show, y'all. I was like, oh, we'll just be on for like 30 minutes, right quick. Well, we hit it and quit it. We'll be. I feel like I could be out here a whole nother hour because this is a lot. So one of the things that you just mentioned is having those conversations, right? So to your point about Pornhub, the reason that our kids are going to Pornhub is because they can't have conversations about sex in their house. They can't ask questions because if they ask questions, they're accused of being fast. So what do? They go ask their friends. Well, their friends are stupid. Their friends don't know. So they go and find out. Ask Google. Like you said, Google and Siri will tell you everything that you didn't want them to know. So a place to start is destigmatizing these conversations. So it is natural, first, and especially being in middle school world. We are at the place. Brandy says she just had this conversation with her 10-year-old. We are at the place in middle school where kids they going through puberty, so their hormones all over the place. They don't know what to do with themselves. They a mess. Okay. We talked about identity last episode. Go back and look at that so you can see like what's actually happening. They're trying to find their identity, their sexual identity, all of that, right? Plus hormones, plus girls developing, plus boys don't know what to do with their penises. Like it's just a lot. So they have to feel comfortable to be able to ask questions. Like girls are starting their menstrual cycle. It's just so many things that are happening. So with my mentor group that I have, one of the things that we would do every February is, thank you, Deneen, is we would talk about relationships and we would talk about sex. And I allowed them to ask any question that they wanted to. They asked questions anonymously, put it in this box, and I'm gonna open the box and we're gonna talk about it. And the reason I would do that is because I was that child that couldn't ask questions at home. And I vowed that I would never make a child feel the way that I felt about having a natural question. They're not blind. Like the girls know that their breasts are developing. They know that they started their cycle. The boys recognize that the girls are developing. They recognize that their penis feels some type of way when they look at these girls. Like they know that they had a wet dream. Like, why are we acting like they don't know that these things are happening? They recognize that stuff is happening, but we do them a disservice when we don't make it comfortable for them to talk about it. They should be able to go to their parents or whoever they live with and say, "So the other day I saw this girl and I really liked her and it made me feel some type of way. I don't really know what to do with that." They should be able to have that conversation. The girl should be able to go and say, "I started my cycle. I don't know what this means," or, and have the conversation about how sex was created. We make sex into this horrible thing instead of being very honest with them that sex is beautiful. You should absolutely love sex. And when you get to be an adult and you're able to make those good decisions and you have a partner that loves you and makes you feel this particular way, instead of us setting them up with the example and giving them examples of how to put themselves in position with someone who values them, we say, "Don't talk about that. You can't talk. Don't be having the sex. Let me put you on the birth control. Let me do this. Let me do that." So we just make it this thing. Well, now they feel like they have to hide it.
Mm-hmm.
Now I got to hide it. Now I got to do it in secret because apparently I can't talk about this. So now this is bad. So here's another layer of secrets. So now I can't talk to you about it. So now it's up to this boy to teach this girl what sex is, but who taught him what sex is and what that looks like, right? So that he is his uncles probably done pulled him to the side, Uncle Reggie and them. They done pulled him to the side and told him, "Get all the sex that you can." So then he comes to her and says this, but because she doesn't know her worth and she doesn't know her value, and because we're not talking about it, now she's in a situation to fall prey to this sexual situation when it really just should have been a conversation. And it starts early. Call your body parts what they are. They're penises and vaginas. That's what they are.
No.
Like, that's not a bad word. I would have my girls say over and over again, penis, vagina, say it, breast, say it. They're body parts. And it's okay. You need to call them what they are because I need you to be clear. We're not calling it pocketbooks and what they call the cootie coo. It's called a vagina. I
Mm-hmm.
need you to know that you have one. I need you to know where it is. I need you to know how it functions. I need you to know when something is wrong with it. I need you to know all of that, right? But we don't have those conversations with them. So, how do we expect them to then make good choices about their bodies and the things that are happening if we won't have these conversations?
You're right.
We have to normalize the conversation. And if you don't know how to have the conversation, seek some help. Tag somebody in. Hey, what do I say? There are books that help you to talk about this. They put in the comments pocketbooks, coochie pops. No. Dingaling says wee wee. No. It's called a penis and a vagina. That's it. And this is how it works. And even now, we don't even have um we used to call it human growth and development when I taught science in middle school. We don't really even have a comprehensive program for that anymore. So where are they learning these things? It's back on the homes. So we got to have those conversations. We
Yep.
need to ask good questions. And the good questions are not an interrogation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we start out again with teaching our kids about their boundaries. And again, we had a whole episode about boundaries, and you can go to Teaching for the Culture and find those episodes. But you start teaching them about their boundaries. You start helping them to understand their triggers. You start getting them back in touch with their gut and with their spirits so that they know when something is off, so that they can advocate for themselves. You have to have those conversations. You have to go through that learning. And y'all might be learning together. Y'all might be learning about boundaries together because, hell, I had to teach myself about boundaries. My people ain't know nothing about no boundaries. But it's a thing. So you start having those conversations. So then once you have those conversations, then you normalize asking. What was the best part of your day? Again, we had a show where we talked about this. Good questions that parents can ask their kids about how school was or how their day was or what's going on. What was the best part of your day? What made you happy today? What made you sad today? What made you uncomfortable today? If there was a part of your day that you were able to change, what would it be? If there was a part of your day that you would want to happen every single day, what would that be? Who infringed on your boundaries today? What do you want to do about that? How did it make you feel? Like these are questions that you can ask in order to get to the root. But this is the key. You got to ask the question, then you got to shut up so you can hear the answer.
That's right.
And
And
it
not
might be
respond for them.
right. It might be an uncomfortable silence because they really trying to figure out because they used to you just answering. So they really just trying to figure out when you gonna answer because like you really want me to answer this?
Right.
Then it's a waiting game. So then it's like, no, no, like I want to make this a thing. And even it might even sound like, and I feel like this was on a previous episode as well, saying to them, you know, I haven't done a good job with being approachable for you to have these conversations with me. And I realize that, and I want to do better. So, what do you need from me in order to feel comfortable that you can talk to me? They might say, I need to know I'm not going to get in trouble. Sometimes I feel like I want to say something and I feel like I'm about to curse or whatever, right? But y'all lay those ground rules for what that looks like. Again, this is boundary setting, right? So create the condition so that you can have the conversation so that the secrets are not at the root of how you're operating with your kids. And it's uncomfortable. It's a learning curve. But with practice, it becomes a completely freeing way of being able to ensure that you are breaking the cycle. And I will venture to say the first thing is making a decision that you're committed to breaking the cycle.
Yeah.
You know, because it is going to take work. It's not something that you're just going to snap your fingers and magically it's going to be like, all right, we out here breaking cycles. Like, nope. It is work, but it is so worth it. And I know all of us want the next generation to be better than we are. So that means that we have to set them up to be better than we are. And that means that we might have to listen to the whole child every other week to be like, okay, this is my homework for the next 2 weeks. Here we go. So speaking of homework, I challenge you all to um, have that conversation. Ask them what they need from you in order to improve communication between you. Ask them. And then we would love for you to come back into the comments and tell us what they say.
Yeah.
What do you need from me to feel like you're able to talk to me about anything? Because we say that, but then when they do it, they get some kind of consequence. We can't do that. We can't do that. So that's my ask.
I'm gonna piggyback on that. And if you're gonna ask that question for your homework assignment, I want you guys to be in the right space to ask that question. Because that is very, very important. Don't just go up there and say, well, how, like, no, you need to be very intentional and you need to be in a good place before you ask that question because you also need to be ready to receive. And if you're
Hmm.
not ready to receive, then don't ask the question.
Yes, because you never know what they might say, you know, and you're right. You never know what they might say. And that can't sound like, so what I need to do, huh? What I need to do for you to talk to me, huh? Because you just be lying. Well, so what? No, that's not what that looks like. It looks like taking accountability and owning what you could do differently. Again, I haven't set the conditions up in a way for you to feel that you're comfortable talking to me. And that
Mhm.
doesn't remove the responsibility from the child, especially if they're a child that lies all the time. Like that doesn't remove the responsibility from them of lying. But again, The onus falls on the adult. We should always start inward first. What could I have done better to put you in position where you didn't feel like you had to lie? It's because they think they're gonna get in trouble. That's why everybody lies, because they think they're gonna get in trouble. It's gonna be some type of negative consequence that I don't want, so let me lie to try to avoid that consequence. That's why everybody lies. So, what is that negative consequence? What needs to be dealt with in order to improve that communication? So, that's my recommendation.
This was needed.
It was clearly. I didn't I didn't realize, but
Well, like I said, I always appreciate your transparency and your willingness to be vulnerable on these episodes, and the way that, you talk about your upbringing, that will definitely bring awareness to some people that relate to that, and hopefully sets them free. And you have just blossomed and have become such a wonderful person. And the fact that you have, lived through this trauma and have made a decision that you are going to set the stage for the people to follow behind you to make sure that they are their best self moving forward is admirable.
thank you. And let me just say this before we go, that just because the reason why I am so transparent and vulnerable and sharing what I have been through is because I need you to understand that this is not a life sentence, that you've been through some type of trauma. And for some of us, it's years and years and years, because after childhood, then it was an abusive relationship. Like, then that was trauma, right? Um, this has taken work. Like, this has taken work to get to this point. But it all started with a decision. It started with me saying, I will never pass down these types of behaviors to anybody else. I don't have my own children yet, but I have been blessed to be in a motherly role to hundreds of children, because every child that I taught was my child. I called them my kids, and that's how I treated them. But I had to decide and make that decision that something is going to change, period.
Mhm.
And I'm willing to do whatever I can to make sure that it changes. And again, it starts with me. So I had to build myself up. I had to figure out who I was. I had to have hours of time just crying out to God to really understand why He even allowed these things to happen. So I want you to know that this is not a life sentence for you. This is something that you can use as a catalyst to push you to the next level and to in real life change the future. So I know, some of you all may know what I do, but I am a life coach. And the reason why I'm a life coach is because I'm committed to helping people access their purpose and to operate in their destiny. And a lot of times a part of that is dealing with these traumas that have happened, and piecing together how everything that has happened in our lives has happened on purpose, with purpose. Much of it might not have felt good. Much of it might have been absolutely traumatic, but it happened on purpose, with purpose. How can I use that event in order to change somebody else's life and to change my life?
Mhm.
So if you're feeling pricked in your spirit and you're like, I've been needing this and I've been wanting to do this, please reach out to me, because my whole program, I have an 8-week program. It's called Discover Your Destiny. And it's all about that. It's about meeting yourself so that you know who God designed you to be, so that you can make the mark on this world that you're called to make. That's what I do every day. So my Instagram handle is there at Kimberlyn J. You can find me on Facebook at Kimberlyn Jackson. You can go to my website, kimberlynjackson.com. And there's a banner at the top that says it's time to discover your destiny. You can click the tab that says discover your destiny. Reach out to me, because This is what I do. This is why I do what I do, because we've got to break these cycles. We've got to. There is no choice. It just has to happen in order for us to be successful. So, thank you, as always, for allowing the spirit to move how I want to move. Because, yeah, this was
Amen.
necessary.
I just listen. So for those of you that, have, watched and will watch, the replay, I just want to thank you guys again for tuning in to the Teaching for the Culture and tuning in to the Whole Child. And I just want to have a transparent moment and just let you guys know that this has just been a phenomenal journey for me. This has been something where I'm just very thankful of the positive work and movement that is happening for our children in this critical time that we're in. And I just want to say thank you to everyone that watches, everyone that supports, everyone that, is rooting for us and, just wishing us well on this journey for our children. And that's the focus, that's the intent, always has, always will be. And we really have to normalize these tough conversations, because if we don't, we're not going to address the root. And I made a vow to my children and a promise to my kids, because just like you, Kimberlyn, they are our children. And when they are in my classroom, they are my kids. And I made a promise to them, and I told them that this world is going to be better for them, and I'm going to do everything in my capacity, in my wheelhouse, to make it better for our children, because I was heartbroken at some of the trauma that I've witnessed our children go through that I would have never imagined me going through at my age.
Yeah.
It's human trafficking that's taking place in this city. There's sex trafficking that's taking place. And it's scary. You have white vans that's driving in different parts of the community like clockwork. And it's real, it's scary. And if you look at the children that are missing and you look at the demographic of the children that are often missing, I want you to look at that and you let me know what you see.
Mhm.
And I just hope that you guys have intentional conversations with your children at home, because if not, Google and Siri will.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the way that these apps are set up, you are giving them unlimited access to predators and you have no idea.
Mhm.
So, in this, I will also share a link of a mother that pretended to be a 10-year-old child, and she went on an experiment, and there was several grown men that was reaching out to her thinking that she was 10 years old, sending the child sexually explicit content and everything right on Instagram, an app that probably your children use today. So the call to action is to normalize and have these conversations at home, but also to check your child's cell phone, because your children could be in some serious danger right now if you're not uplifting them, loving them, and having these conversations. Because there's people on the other side that look to this because of toxic trauma bonds, and they continue their cycle of abuse, manipulation, and harming our children, when we could get to the root by having conversations and normalizing what's the reality and coming up with solutions to stop it.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, you have
Um, I,
final words?
I did. I just wanted to say, I know you don't watch TV, but this season of The Shy is on Showtime,
Mm-hmm.
and we're on the fourth episode. Is all about what you were just talking about just now. It really has allowed the children in the show to take the forefront in the conversation, and I really think this season is going to be super impactful, and I think it's really going to align to the things that we're talking about here. So if you all have not watched The Shy, I urge you to watch. Go back to the first season and catch up, but this season in particular is really, really, really good. So I just felt that in my spirit that I needed to say that for whoever, because I think that people intake media in different ways, but it really paints a picture of what happens in these cell phones. It talks about Finstagrams, the fake Instagram accounts that students have or children have. They call them spam accounts.
Mm.
And what those look like. And parents have no idea. They think that they have all the passwords, and they have no idea that there's a whole nother account out there and how people can find our kids through that. So if you have a chance, please watch The Shy, and it'll kind of make things a little bit clearer as well.
I will
So
definitely check it out. That's right up my alley. So thank you guys again. This has been a fabulous episode. Definitely very deep, but it's necessary. And I hope that you guys take this and be intentional with your children because they deserve it. And we're trying to get to the whole child. So thank you guys for tuning in to Teaching for the Culture. And you guys have a fabulous night, and y'all stay safe and stay dry because it's storming out here in these streets.
bye, y'all.
All right. Bye bye, y'all.